Welcome to Threads of Enlightenment. I have a surprise guest that I actually we've been having a fun time before we got on the show. But as you know, what we do here at Threads of Enlightenment, I let the guests introduce themselves to us, and then we will embark on all the things that they are doing currently, and then we're going to go back as usual into the backstory and get all the nitty gritty so that we can learn from the wisdom that they have accumulated over time, that you and I would grow to become the best human spirits that we are capable of becoming. And so I would love you to introduce yourself to us so that we can welcome you properly.
Thank you so much, Ken. I'm so excited to be here. I love what you're doing.
Thank
My
you.
name is Keira Poulsen. I am a mother to five beautiful, wild, extraordinary children. And I am a spiritual entrepreneur coach. And so, for
Mhm.
that, in my world, that means that I incorporate my love of spirituality and tools and working with the divine, as well as a lot of healing work in helping women arise as leaders, like being really successful leaders in the world and having really successful businesses of light. So, I help women. Bring divine messages through in the form of a written book. And I created a publishing house for women. It is called Freedom House Publishing Co., where it is a home of liberation, a house of liberation. We help women liberate their stories of light, their healing stories, their divinely given messages, and liberate readers with these powerful messages of light. So
I
I
got to
love it.
chime in right here. What about us
Yes,
men
I
that
know.
want to be?
So I've had this real call to serve women,
Uh huh.
and then recently I've had men show up. So I feel like there's a power in it being a house for women. So I think there might be a house for men that I'm going to create, like a publishing house in bringing, because there's a place there that I really want to serve as well. So it's in the
In the
creation. I can
works.
feel
Okay.
it. I can feel it.
Gotcha.
Yes.
So you're
Um
pregnant again.
yes. I literally feel that. Like I really would have had ten children if I didn't have to raise them all. so so birth is really fun, and that's what I'd love to do. I love to birth ideas and
Yes.
creations, and help women bring their creations to life. So I run
Mhm.
masterminds of helping these women rise as leaders, and it's just love it. And then I have a podcast. I have a podcast called the Awaken Podcast, and I have a few books out in the world. My goal is, how do I activate more light, and how do I help people awaken to the divine? So it's really
That's
what I'm
excellent.
all about.
She sounds like a busy woman, I would say, with the family life as well as all of the things that you're doing. So I am so glad and honored to have you here. And as usual with our guests, we love those stories that you tell us where you're at today and all the accomplishments that you have achieved, and doing it with five children. I assure you that that is a tremendous task that you have accomplished. And so we are honored to have you here. Now, what we would like to do is go back, as we always do here at Threads. My people have always heard me talk about it, is the fact that we get the awakening. And that awakening usually comes, a lot of people that I've interviewed, it's 99% of us. And I
Mhm.
think that's because we are stubborn, and most of us don't pay attention because we're not living in the now. The breadcrumbs are usually coming all the time. It's just that we don't pay attention to them until. And
Mm.
so, if you can tell us, when was your until?
Yeah. So it was 5 years ago, and
Mm,
I remember just feeling really lost in my life. I'd always wanted to be a mother, and I always knew that I wanted to have a big family, and so I did that. I did. I brought them through, and I got to have this
hmm.
beautiful life as being a mother, and I still felt super lost. And I
Wow.
really didn't know, like, who I was. I didn't have any more dreams left. And I remember it was like, I think it was my 33rd birthday, and we were sitting there at the Cheesecake Factory, and my husband said, "What are your dreams for this year?" And I just broke down sobbing. And I was like, I
Wow.
don't have any dreams left. I don't even know how to dream. I don't even know who I am. And
Wow.
he was just very clear, like, you have like 3 days to come up with one dream.
Mm.
And I'm just really grateful for him, because when he held that space for me, it opened up my heart to seek.
Yeah.
And I think that's like the first ingredient of awakenings is
Mm-hmm.
seeking. And so I just began to pray every day, like, God, show me my purpose, show me how to dream again.
Mm-hmm.
And I prayed that for about 5 months,
Mm.
and nothing would show up. and
Mm.
then and then it came in the most unexpected, and not the way I would have expected it, or
Usually.
planned on it coming, right?
Mm-hmm.
And because of some outside events that had happened, it actually triggered all of my memories and pain of being sexually abused as a child. And
Wow.
the pain that hit was like a tidal wave where I could not get a breath.
Wow.
And it just, it took me to a place that was so intense that I thought, there's no way I can stay on this earth. Like, there's no way
Mm.
that I can stay in a world with so much pain. And so I was very, very close to ending my life. And in that
Wow.
moment, I felt God like, stop, like, no, you have a purpose here, and
Mm-hmm.
there is work to be done. And in that
Wow.
moment, I said, all right, God, if I stay, then you better show me every day
Mm.
what I'm here to do.
Wow.
And that declaration changed my life.
Wow. So here you are, a young mom with your children and no dreams at the time.
Yeah.
And God loves dreamers
Yeah.
because he talks about Joseph and his dreams. From his dream, in Joseph in his dream, he was able to save a whole nation.
Yeah.
So I I understand some of the things that you're saying. So here he comes, and I love how God meets us where we are.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of people, I go to church sometimes and I see them, the church when I walk in, I'm like, if I was God, I would be running away from all of that mess. And so I, you know, so I tell him, I said, God is, he's the most beautiful thing out there. He's so simple
Yeah.
that he will come down to you, as the Bible tells us in Genesis, when he came looking for his, to sit down and talk with his creation. And he said, where were you? He says, as it was their custom. And
Mm.
so I think that is such a beautiful thing that I try to tell people, that God is looking to have a custom with you so that
Mm.
he can come and talk to you like he did with you. And
Yeah.
so, what did he say, and how did you respond to that instruction?
Well, even though I was in this really dark, dark, dark place, like, having 5 kids doesn't really allow you to stay there very long. So I
Mm-hmm.
was in this deep, deep pain. And then it was time to pick up one of my kids from preschool. And so I uh, wiped my mascara ridden face as I'd just
Mm-hmm.
been sobbing for hours. And I got myself in my car, and I'm driving, and I'm yelling at God, like, why do you let there why is there so much pain in this world? Like, how
Mm-hmm.
did you let such horrible things happen in my life and other people's lives? I was so angry. And I just kept saying, like, where are you, God? Like, where
Mm-hmm.
are you? And I just saw, as I was raised, I believe God speaks to us in the stories that we were raised in our own religions, right? Like, I feel like that's
Mm-hmm.
how he
Yeah.
speaks. And so I was raised in the LDS religion, and there was a story in the scriptures where one of the prophets was in jail, and he was praying, like, God, where are you? And God said, I'm always here. And
Mm-hmm.
even this horrible thing that's happening is in your highest good. And so in that moment, I was actually shown that scripture story, and I just felt God speak it to me, like, this this is for your good.
Wow.
This is your good. And because so for me, God always speaks to me in parables. And I went to pick up my daughter from preschool, and it was at this house that had a farm. And I went out back, and at that exact moment, and I actually have not shared this story in a really long time. So the fact that it's coming through is very, very special. It's a very sacred story, but I think it's beautiful.
Thank you for
Uh, I
sharing.
went, I went out back and was picking up her. All of a sudden, the woman who was the teacher said, "Oh my gosh, my goat is giving birth way too early. Go grab the birth bag." And she told me where it was, and I went and grabbed the birth bag. And at that moment, I and helped her deliver this baby goat that was dead. And in that moment, I watched her bring this little goat to life, and I heard God say, like, "This is your rebirth. This is your
Wow.
birth. Like, let this be where everything else dies and you be reborn." And so it was. It was a death of all that was, and it was a birth of all that was to come and that is now.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for sharing because it is powerful imagery
Yeah.
of transformation and rebirth, as you stated, that God just took this situation that was happening and just happenstance
Right.
that you came.
Right.
And I tell people there's no such thing, but let's go with it.
Right.
As happenstance that you were there, and from this situation, you were given birth.
Yeah.
You came out. Now you're standing up, a person that is reborn. How did you translate that rebirth now, having the uh, the responsibility of the family, and then having the insight of this new rebirth? You have your husband's needs, your children's needs, and now you have been given this um, opportunity to change.
Yeah.
How did you proceed from there?
Well, it put me in a very open state where I felt like every step I took, I asked God to guide it. It was like, this is a new
Hmm.
world that I don't know.
You
I
don't
don't
know.
know how to be this new person. And so I
Hmm.
just kept putting things on the altar, like, "Okay, God, show me this." And I knew right away that I needed help. So
Hmm.
I uh, I asked God to bring me the perfect therapist, and I sent a request out on Facebook, who has a great therapist, and some one of the person's names that was recommended was like highlighted in my heart, and so I
Hmm.
reached out and I began therapy right away, and it changed my life. It helped me move through the pain. It helped me move through the trauma,
Hmm.
and my husband really did. He really did have to hold me and hold a lot of responsibility as I healed. Which up till that point, I was like a doer, and I
Hmm.
was like I'll do everything, I'll hold it all. And so
Hmm.
it was a beautiful shift in me being able to receive help.
Wow. So that God even blessed you with a beautiful husband, a strong person that understood where you were and was there to hold your hands. And I keep telling people that it sounds like you guys are in a what we call a covenant, which is
Mm,
much different than a marriage. People begin to understand the difference because in marriages they claim rights and so forth, but a covenant is a totally different thing.
mm,
Is where the Bible tells us, as they say in Corinthians 13, that love, it doesn't hold grudges, doesn't do any of those things. And it sounds like you guys are in a true covenant, and I tip my hat off to that. And so, what an honor. So,
yeah.
as your husband now begins to assist in that piece, and you've gotten your team together, to your initial team, to
Mhm.
help you progress. How long did it take for that you were going through to begin to all the trauma that you went through? How did your progression, the progression of accepting it, the progression of the forgiveness of that thing that was done against you, or how did all of those things play out, and what time frame did it play out in?
So this is what I think is really interesting, and I this is why I'm so passionate about helping women create, because I saw that creation was a part of my healing. And
Hmm.
so I was probably only in therapy for 6 months when I felt the inspiration to write a book. And I'd never
Wow.
wanted to be an author, I'd never planned on being an author, but
Hmm.
it was very clear that this book needed to come through. And so I said yes. I said yes to the call. And I
Hmm.
would spend time with God every morning and ask God to write this book with me. And that was the catalyst of my healing, like starting to co-collaborate with God
Hmm.
in my work began to expand my healing quicker. So I was still going to therapy, but
Yeah.
creating, like, it quickened the healing process. And that's why I haven't stopped creating since. I just find that creation is, it's such a healing aspect, and it's how, for me, it is how I commune with God. Creating is how I know
Well,
God.
excellent, because I believe that we are creators. Because why do I say that? Because we were created in the image and likeness. If we are created in the image, it means that the looks, the exterior, and all of those things he has. And the Bible tells us that because Moses said to him, "Let me see your face." And God said, "No, I can't show you my face, but I'll show you my back." We know that he has a form, but the likeness part that I keep telling people that we tend to forget. And the likeness was demonstrated to us in Genesis when he says, "Let there be light, let there be light." We have that same ability to create. God has given it to us, and we create that way. Why? We create just like he did. He made a decision, let us make man in our image. And then he began to profess and confess what he wanted to do. He needed a place to put this man, so he created this. And then after he's finished all of that, then he focused on the man. You and I are creators, and I keep telling people, and so that's why I like to have people like yourself. Here you are, this mom of five, and in a situation where this darkness comes due to a situation. You and I were having a conversation before. When we look at the Bible, it was darkness before light. When darkness comes into our lives, I tell people, do not panic.
Hmm.
Do not panic. Close your eyes and say, all right, what are we creating now? And
Mm.
you are on this path with God, and He begins, as I mentioned earlier, that He had with Adam, as it was your custom with Him, as you began to talk with Him and commune with Him and have the conversation about the book and stuff like that. How did you come about now? Because you have a publishing company.
Mhm.
How was that? Did you publish it somewhere? How did that came about?
Yeah, so this is one of my favorite stories because I think a lot of times we think when God inspires us to do something, it means it's going to happen right away.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how the publishing house happened. When I was getting ready to publish my book, I realized that I needed to create a publishing house to be able to publish, self publish.
Mm-hmm.
And at that moment, I heard so clearly like that this would be a publishing house for other authors. And so I met with my
Nice.
lawyer, I created everything. I went to a trademark lawyer, I did all this groundwork. And I thought, okay, God told me to create this publishing house. But then
Mm-hmm.
it just sat there, and it sat there for years. And I remember getting the statement that said my bank account for the publishing house was down to $14 and that it would like most likely close. And then I knew that the
Mm-hmm.
publishing house would end. And I thought, well, why did God even ask me to do this? Like nothing is, and as I was going to close the account, I heard a very clear voice that said, do not close this account. And so I took $100 and I threw it into the account, and I was like,
uh,
whatever. And within 2 months, one of the ladies I was coaching showed up with a
yeah.
book, and she said, I don't know how to publish. And I said, oh my gosh, I own a publishing house. Let's figure it out together. And since then, I think we're up to 25 books, and it's been about a year and a
Wow.
half. And this
That's
month
great.
itself, we have 4 books that we're publishing. So it's
Congratulations. That is
it's
awesome. In one
it's such
year.
a testament that when God inspires us to do something, that it's in God's time, not our time,
Yeah.
and that patience is one of the best ingredients.
It sure is. We had talked about the story with Joseph and the dream, and he dreamt that his brothers were his servants and all of this type stuff. His brothers took him on a trip because he was talking about this dream, and it just
Yeah.
happened that this group of people coming, tradesmen coming by, and they said, "Don't kill him, let's sell him." So they sold him.
Mm.
And it was years later that he became co ruler of the area, and the children of Israel were able to come because of the famine that was happening in Israel. The death of the dream, I always tell, the death of the dream is one of the scariest places to be in, because if we don't understand what it is, Jesus mentioned about the planting of a seed, and then when the seed dies, everyone thinks that I've met so many people that have abandoned the seed because it hasn't sprung forth as yet, because they didn't understand the principle that the seed has to die. And once it dies, Jesus said, it will bring forth much fruit. And so here you are, $14, you're about to it had died, and
Yeah.
God said, no, don't do it. And here you are, all a year later, and all of this fruit that has blossomed from that. And so here's a perfect example for you not to abandon those dreams, because I think a lot of it has to do with God needs to work on people's heart, starting with yours, and then every other person around you. He was working on that lady to write that book while you thought, darn, who knows what he had to do to prompt her to go create that book, but he got it done, and
Yeah.
then he brought her to you. Trust God. He knows everything, and so he knows where you are. Just relax, give him a break. And so here you are. You have gotten all of this stuff now. The book is here, the publishing company is started. So, how did you begin to expand into the other aspect, the spiritual entrepreneur? How did you expand to start reaching women? You had made a reference, you said the lady that you were coaching. When
Mhm.
did you start that, and how were you led to start that?
I started coaching, I would say, shortly after I published my first book. So 2018, I
Mm-hmm.
brought my book through, and this is why I love books so much, is I feel like they pave the way for whatever else needs to come through. So because I said
Mm-hmm.
yes to the book, it opened up this place in my heart where I really felt like I wanted to start coaching. I wanted to help women find their purpose. That was what was loud for me at that point. So I remember
Mm-hmm.
my cousin signed on. She was my very first client, and she just let me, like, we just rolled with things, and then it just started to shift and change. And then there was this one point where I realized, like, I am this very spiritual being, and I love my spiritual tools, but I'm also like a tech nerd, and I have a husband who's
Mm-hmm.
taught me how to build landing pages and email sequences and do all the techie stuff that most
Mm-hmm.
spiritual women have a hard time with. So that's when I
Mm-hmm.
created the spiritual entrepreneur, so I could, like, be a translator
Okay.
for them. Like, hey, here's how we do the business side
Mm-hmm.
and still use our spiritual tools. So that's
Spiritualism.
what created the spiritual entrepreneur.
Nice, nice. That's wonderful. So I love as we are uncovering the layers of your story. I love how every aspect of it is one of a servant, how
Mm,
you're reaching out as a servant to other people. You get the revelation, you get this, and you reach out. You get
mm,
this, and you reach out. The book that I wrote was the last chapter was about becoming a servant.
mm,
And there's nothing more beautiful than reaching out and going to another individual to hold their hands, as I mentioned to you about threads of enlightenment. It's us coming together with our threads and creating this beautiful tapestry that the world can look at and be amazed by it and want to be a part of it. And so I love the fact that here you are, just absolutely um, offering yourself and giving more of you each level that you have gone to. So I know that you have a store as well. How did that come around? And how did you see how I'm going step by step, all the different things that you're in while you're still being a mom,
yeah.
and a
Well,
wife.
yeah. I will say that God has really opened up the spaces where, when I began this work, my husband worked for corporate. He worked 14-hour days. I was pretty much like a single mom because he worked so much. And now, 5 years later, he has a job in real estate that allows him to work from home. And he and I really hold a lot of the responsibilities together.
Hmm.
And that is how I do so much. I really do believe it's because they're I can't do it without him. He holds a lot so that I can do the work that I do, and I'm super grateful.
Oh, next time I need to grab a hold of him too. You have to bring him with you next time.
I know. You know, we've never done an interview together. He's a totally
No?
different personality. This is not his area. He's like
Oh,
doesn't
that's
he doesn't
beautiful.
like to talk. He doesn't like to.
That's even better because I don't like to talk. If you know my story, I don't like to do it at all. And here I am. So,
Look at
um, trust me, it took me a while to do this. I had started it and then I saw it changing. I revolted and I stopped. I stopped totally for
that.
months. I wouldn't do anything because as you, certain things began to come up that as a child started to present itself before me. One of it was the fact that I did not want to be seen because of an incident that took place to me. So I hid. And
Yeah.
so I had to overcome, just like anyone else. That's why I tell people we all have our journey and it doesn't matter. Here I have 3 podcasts and I'm talking and doing this stuff. But the minute I had to start coming to people like yourself and inviting and having a conversation, I panicked and went dark. And so
Mhm. Mhm.
but I was able to overcome that, and I am having so much fun doing this. It's absolutely who I am and what I love to do. And so I understand some of the things, and I listen to you talking about walking through yours, and I'm thinking, oh yeah, I'm still going, I'm still going through mine and so forth. So here you are today, and you're teaching and growing and the partnership with your husband, your family. I know that you're pregnant with an idea about the book with the men and so forth. Is there any things, what processes do you believe that someone should that is in your situation, someone that is in a hopeless place,
Yeah.
what advice would you give to them that he or she may be able to not give up and maybe have that visitation where God takes them and see an animal being birthed that it was dead and came back alive. What
Hmm.
advice would you give to them?
I would say that hopelessness is a lie, and that it's just lies that darkness puts into us that says, who am I to ever do anything? I don't think I can live through this. All these things, they're just lies, because the thing that I know is that people who deal with hopelessness, people who deal with darkness, are those that have the most light. They're the ones who are here to change the world. And that is why darkness hits them so hard. And so
Mm-hmm.
I am here to say that I have been in the deepest levels of hopelessness and darkness. And when I chose to live, and when I
Mm-hmm.
chose to live a life that was guided and directed by the divine, by God, everything began to shift, because I
Mm-hmm.
stopped relying on my own strength and I relied on something so much higher than me, something that was so much stronger than me. And it is 100% possible to move from that space into a place of light.
That is powerful stuff that you just mentioned as we were talking about it earlier. I absolutely 100% believe that every one of us are creators because we are part of the human spirit. We are
Yeah.
part of the human family, and God, we are created. The Bible tells us that in his image and his likeness. And people, I think, they just run over that part, likeness. And as you begin to study what God is like, then you will understand what that means, because he is love. He is about giving. He's about caring. He's about protecting. He is all of these things. And I know that a lot of people attribute the pain that they're suffering to why isn't he doing things? And I know in my cases, some of the things that I had to deal with, but I want to let them know that God is interested. The reason why things are the way they are is because of the will of mankind. He does not interrupt the will, because he made us a creature with will. He made his angels with will. We choose how we want to interact with him. And
Mm.
as that, I believe, that is a beautiful thing, that he has given that to us and offer it to us as children, so that we can be a part when he comes and sit down. As you have created your custom with God, he is interested in that you and I individually come and create our custom with him, because he wants to do great things through you, as he did right here. Yeah.
Yes. And I want to share this last thing is that when I was writing my book, my first book, I remember just feeling so inadequate. And I remember feeling just like, who am I to write a book around this? And I receive a lot from God in visions. It's like that's how
Hmm.
my gifts work. I just see visuals. And so I was in prayer and I saw this vision of me in my home and all of my kids, and the house was a mess, and they were a mess, and I was a mess, and God was at the front door. And I saw God, and I spent all this time cleaning my home and bathing my children. And I remember in this vision, I'd made cookies, and then I let God in. And when I let God in, he pulled me to him and he said, I would take you with your messy house. I would take you with your messy children. I would take you as the mess. And that was such a lesson for me of like, let us not wait
Hmm.
to bring God in, but to just let him come in our brokenness, in our messes. And I just
I
had to open the door for him.
That is beautiful. We are naked before Him. The Bible tells us that God knows the intent of the heart. And because He knows the intent of the heart, He knows the why and the reasoning behind the why. The fact that because we are naked before Him, hiding is just futile, because He knows who you are in the deepest parts of you, that you don't even know who you are. And he's knocking at our door to help us to get a chance to find out who we are. And so that's the thing that is beautiful about him. And he was coming to sit down and talk to Adam to tell him who he was. Here he had created all this stuff for him, but he's like, come in and sit down, and says to him, hey, you are the God of this. You are the one that, and he was coming just to share. And so he comes today to meet with us. And so I pray that we listen. And as he spoke to you, we don't have to clean up ourselves, because he knows the intent. And that's a beautiful thing, man, that when he knows us to that degree, I think then you should just run straight into those arms and get a chance to rest your head, as they say. So, where do you go from here with so we're back here. So, what I know you've mentioned about being pregnant with that one thing, but I want the people to know that some of the things that you mentioned, and I want to have them come to you so that you can have the courses and the classes, the master class, to help them get in touch with the divine, with God, so that He can walk with them and expound their life, so that they can create that beautiful journey that you have been able to create it as you walk with God. And I know I'm going to post your stuff, your sites, and your social stuff. Tell them about some of the classes and some of the tools that you have available to help them in to start their journey.
So, the fastest way to get in contact with me, honestly, is to send me on Instagram. Keira Poulsen's
Okay.
my Instagram handle. It's so much easier for me to just respond to people that way than it is in emails.
Hmm.
And I teach women how to do a daily healing practice. I also teach women a sacred space, and I would love to offer it to your listeners. So I'll send you a link to my sacred space, and I'll give them a bonus so they can have it for free if they put your
Hmm.
name in. And what this will do is it's a 7-day training on how they can dedicate a sacred space in their home where they go to commune with God every day. And to me, that is the
Awesome.
core of
Yes.
creation. It's the core of us stepping into our light. And if anyone listening feels like they've got this book that's just tapping on their shoulder,
Yes.
then
Yes.
reach out, because not only can I publish their book, but I help women learn how to receive their book so that we can then them and bring them into the world.
Excellent. I'm going to mention that to everyone, to all the women out there that have a book on their heart, just to touch base with you so that they can be guided in the process of how to go about doing that, because I believe there's a lot of women out there that are pregnant with that type of information and book that is there. That's just God wants it to come out so that He can begin to set people free, because that's the whole thing, and teach them how to become powerful women like yourself, where you can reach back and touch the other women that are around you. I know that us men, we just have to wait until she comes out with the other one. So we'll hang on there, fellas.
It's coming. Don't worry. Creations happen pretty fast. It'll be coming through. I need to figure out what it is called, but it will be coming through soon.
Okay, fellas, you heard that. We just have to wait let's give her a couple of weeks.
Give me a few days. Don't worry, it's coming next week.
Like her husband said, you got 3 days.
3 days. Solid. Probably won't take much time.
I want to thank you so much for coming by and visiting us and sharing with us your story. Just creating a space where you were able to open up and to deliver us some insight. That our hope is that as they hear your story, that hopelessness that they're in, that they will not stay there, and there is no reason to stay there. Look where God has brought you in a short time. 5 years is not a long time. If He can do it for Keira, I'm sure He will do it for you. We are going to send all the young girls, all those young ladies that are listening, that have books in them. Here is someone that can help you, and she will be glad to do it. So I am honored to have you, and hopefully I can get you back. And when you are finished with a couple of things for us men, we'll bring her back.
I will tell you.
You hear me keep dropping.
It does. It feels really strong. So yes, I will definitely be back. This was such a beautiful conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and you have a great evening.
You too. See ya.
Bye-bye. Everyone who's listening to this podcast, we hope to continually help you to learn how to embrace moments of darkness, because it is in the darkness that we learn how to develop and use our abilities to truly see those parts of ourselves, often invisible to us, in the light. It becomes your responsibility to navigate through all of your trials, to find out who you truly are, and begin your journey to loving yourself, which is possibly one of the most difficult things you will ever do in your life. To love yourself and to find the real you. But always remember to enjoy the journey. Thank you for coming by. Please subscribe. And if you can support us financially, we deeply appreciate it.